including diplomats taken hostage by Iran in 1979. Jared Halpern, Fox News.
Several hours after she was mistakenly declared dead by her publicist and her boyfriend, actress Tanya Roberts has died after collapsing in her home on Christmas Eve. I'm Lisa Lacera, and this is Fox News.
Sorry, I know this is important, but I need to run to the post office, said no successful entrepreneur ever. Stop wasting your time and money. Get Stamps.com. Never set foot in the post office again. Stamps.com brings the U.S. Postal Service and UPS right to your computer. Avoid trips to the post office. Print official U.S. postage, send invoices, letters, or packages, and schedule pickups right from your home or office. 24/7 with Stamps.com. You'll get close to 10% off every first-class stamp, up to 40% off priority mail, and up to 62% off UPS shipping rates. The kind of rates reserved for the Fortune 500. Plus, with Stamps.com, there are no long-term contracts. Join over 900,000 customers right now. There's no risk. Go to Stamps.com, click on the microphone at the top of the homepage, and enter code FOX for a 4-week trial, plus free postage and a digital scale. Stamps.com. Click the microphone and enter code FOX. Stamps.com, FOX.
Others say it. We prove it. We are controlling transmission. WLTK DB. Let's talk. Alternative Talk Radio. WLTKDB.com. Views and opinions expressed are those of the host and guest. Any content provided by our host or guest are of their opinion and do not intend to harm any religions, ethnic group, club, organization, company, individual, or anyone or anything. Thank you for listening. Enjoy the show.
Well, they say that you're a fool. You believe in magic.
I'm Paranormal Pete, and I'm on a journey to seek answers to the questions that have crossed all of our minds. What happens to us when we die? Is there an afterlife? I'm a regular guy who discovered the gift of psychic mediumship in my 30s. My passion for history and the unknown have put me right here, right now. My mantra for anything paranormal is, we don't know much and anything is possible. Join me as we find our way through the stories, evidence, and experiences of the paranormal and beyond in search of answers, even if that leads to more questions. Are you with me?
Hey everybody, welcome to the Paranormal Pete Show, episode 6 on January 5th. With I'm your host, Pete Orbea, and tonight I'm going to be welcoming in, after the first break, a very special guest, Ben Robison. He's a great investigator, researcher, knows his tech, great guy. I'm excited to have him on. So we're going to talk about some really cool stuff tonight. We're going to be talking about a hypothesis that he has called the CERM hypothesis, spectral emotion to radio frequency manifestation. And I think that's going to be a pretty interesting conversation. So I'm really looking forward to tonight's show, but Happy New Year, everybody. We made it to 2021 and we're still going to be, I think we got a little ways to go before we start feeling a little more normal about everything. But at any rate, Happy New Year. Don't let the door hit you in the ass on the way out, 2020. So hello 2021. So welcome everybody. Thanks for tuning in. And we're streaming on Facebook at the Paranormal Pete Show page, but we're also right here on Let's Talk Radio, WLTKDB.com. I'm so happy to be a part of this station. It's a lot of fun. It's a great group of hosts and shows, and it's really awesome to be a part of that. So I'm thankful for that going into the new year. And if you want to jump on the station chat, just go to the website, WLTKDB.com, and you can get in the chat there. And so if you want to ask any questions, go ahead and submit through the station chat, and I will get that. And hopefully we can get an answer for you. We've also, like I said, on my Facebook page, The Paranormal Pete Show, just look up that. And we're streaming there as well. So I'll be trying to watch both and and catch any comments or questions that come in. And tonight we're also, I think, going to talk a little bit more than just ghost. I think we're going to touch on some other paranormal type things as well, and get Ben's thoughts and experiences, and I'm sure we'll be swapping stories here. So but tonight I thought I'd start off with so we're going to talk about Ben's hypothesis, which is spectral emotion to radio frequency manifestation. And I'm going to kind of take from a medium point of view, psychic point of view, and talk about that a little bit in a different way before we bring Ben in. And so, wanted to talk about personalities and emotions of spirits, ghost entities, whatever you'd like to call them. But I mean, you kind of have to start with energy, right? And what is energy? And it basically it can only transform into a different version or a different type of energy. So kind of at least in my experience in psychical research and medium research, field research, everything, I think, when our physical body dies in some form, our energy, our soul, whatever you want to call it, our brain waves somehow, in some ways survives into the afterlife. And I think we perceive that as what you call ghosts. Now, when you listen to stories from all over the world and in through history, ghost stories of the paranormal, personal experiences, they're all vastly different. But I think when you look at someone's claims, when you think about a ghost as a person, they were a person at one time. They're people too. When you kind of start looking at it like that and listening to claims and stories, it's almost like if you look at them as if they're living, it makes a little bit more sense, or at least, I guess, in my experience, makes you feel a little bit better about going into creepy places and in the dark. And if you hear a voice or see, a shadow, or maybe you're lucky enough to see an apparition, put the human element back into it. And I think it makes it a little bit easier for us to maybe understand what that experience was, and certainly think about it more and how it relates to other stories and other experiences. So keeping that human element in mind with a ghost, a spirit, an entity, a specter, that I think it's important because in my experience, I think emotion and personality have so much to do with the experiences we have out investigating in the field, sitting at home and having your own personal experience, whatever it might be. And when you look at, emotions, and I think kind of what Ben's hypothesis gets at is, emotional changes can make energy changes. And when he comes on, we'll have him clarify if I'm misspeaking this, but I think everyone has personalities just as they did in life. So I'm kind of looking at it from that point. So, I've done a presentation before called Spirited Personalities, and I think it's a fun title because spirits have personalities. I think a lot of times when you watch TV shows, paranormal TV shows and stuff, when there's a negative sort of activity, a negative experience somebody has, people automatically just want to say, oh, it's a demon, it's non-human. it's something really bad, if something negative is happening. And probably one of the most common types that make people think something really bad is just making you feel bad. You're in a location, and maybe you're an empath, or you're just sensitive or very observant, and you get into a place and you just don't feel right. You don't feel good. I think that's probably a pretty common occurrence across the investigation field of, you're in a place and you just don't feel good. Well, you get kind of there's a negative connotation to that when you're getting a feeling that makes you not feel good, happy, light, whatever it is. And when you kind of can, this is where the human element comes back, is if you have an experience and, it didn't make you feel good, or maybe it was something that, said some not nice things, or like, something tells you to get out. Don't, automatically think it's a demon, or, something bad. And if I'm being honest, I haven't had an experience with something I think people would call a demon. So, and thank God for that. Um, and hopefully that day doesn't come, but who knows? I'm kind of, the jury's out for me whether that stuff is really exists out there. Now, I think there's toxic people and toxic personalities and just people who aren't nice. So what happens when they become deceased and transition to the afterlife? What happens? Well, I think they take strong core elements of their personality with them. So the point is, if someone is a real jerk in life, just not a good person, probably in the afterlife, if they are going to make their presence known, if they're going to, stick around a location or whatever, chances are you're probably going to experience their personality of how they were when they were living. So, someone who's a real, um, devious prankster is probably going to be that type of spirit that is, messing with your feet in your bed while you're sleeping, and waking you up and freaking you out, or doing things to freak you out. Um, and, hey, on the other side too, you got, toxic people. Well, just like in life, there's nice people and caring people and things like that. And so I think you get that as well when you're talking about spirits and ghosts and experiences and stories. You get both. You get the real a-holes, but then you can get the real nice people too, and caring people. But, I feel like in my experience with doing readings, it's the nice people, I think, tend to, the really caring type people, they tend to really stick around their family and the ones that they love, the ones that they've left behind here in this existence. They care for them, they want to help them. So, more often than not, I think they're more or less become, spirit guides for people in their family or really close friends that they consider to be family. So they're going to continue to do that on the other side. Now, I do think that another level of that is, for example, let's say you have a location that has a reported apparition in it, and it never really scares anybody. It just kind of is there, and then it's gone. It's kind of, um, it's not doing anything negative to make people feel uncomfortable or feel that it's something quote unquote bad. Um, when you, I think that an investigator could come in, or maybe it's some, the homeowner or the building owner, whatever, property owner, someone could come in, especially an investigator. There's a lot of this out there where they come in with real, they want to instigate. They want to, yell, or, hey, where are you at? Come out wherever you are. That, I think that could take a nice spirit. We'll call it a quote unquote nice spirit. And that could upset them, and then could possibly make the activity seem negative. Maybe they don't want you there anymore because of how you're acting. And so things can change, and then you get that negative side of things. So no matter what you're experiencing, I think if you can try and keep that human element, and just and as an investigator, for all of you listening out there who do investigations, not only when you do an investigation, you want to have your critical thinking and everything, but you also want to have the thinking of how would you treat um, how would you treat these spirits if they were living and you're going into their house, how, or their building, or maybe it's a graveyard, or a cemetery. So, remember, we're all human at one point. We're all in the flesh here on this existence at one point. And so if you go in, and like I said, maybe it's, a pretty benign sort of spirit activity that happens in this place. Somebody could potentially go in there and be an instigator and tick off that spirit, which is then going to make the activity seem negative. And then that's where you get people wanting to exorcise that spirit or force it to leave. And I think that's probably a whole other topic. I'll try and stay neutral on that one, on kicking things out of locations. But again, it's just keeping that human element. So everybody listening out there, is there something you can think of, an experience you had that you can recall, but now thinking about that interaction, that experience, as if they were living, on this plane with us, if they were living, do you maybe think about it a little differently? Or, can you put yourself back in that experience to where, I mean, it's really been, eye-opening for me to kind of think about things like that. And my experience as a psychic medium is, naturally I get along with pretty much everybody. And I've just kind of always been that way, real easygoing. So maybe that's, part of why I just discovered mediumship and everything, is because I can get along with most everybody, even, people who are kind of jerks. I can get along with them. And so, when you're, so as a medium, it's getting along with everybody in this life helps me get along with everybody on that side. And if you can approach with a human element to these spirits, I think it's going to change maybe how you can approach an investigation. For example, the Walker Ames house here in Port Gamble, which is where I'm based out of. And that place, there's lots of stories, tons of stories. There's actually a lot of evidence, and it's mostly all audio, but a lot of different experiences reported in there. And I feel like I've experienced a lot of different things in there. And there's some, things that considered to be negative. And I've felt that before, and know countless others have as well. But once I started to really relate people's personalities to the activity, it kind of changed it for me, in the sense that it's getting along with everybody. And so when I investigated the Walker Ames house, which is pretty often, I introduce myself, thank you for sharing your space with me. I let them know what I'm doing. Hey, I'm gonna be here with a few friends this evening. We're just gonna be checking out your home, and we'd love to have a conversation with you. And I always, any place I go in to investigate, one of the first things I say is that, I'm not here to harm anybody or make anybody do something they don't want to do, or go anywhere that they don't want to go. And because I kind of think about it like, if there's a spirit in this location, maybe it helps put them at ease. Maybe they have the personality of someone who's, you know, really introverted. They don't want to be, they're really nervous about things. Well, I want to go in and let anybody, and I say quote unquote anybody, in this location, and, you know, try and put them at ease that, hey, you know, I'm not here to harm you, just want to talk, you know, and I have some devices here that can help me hear you or help me see you and that sort of thing, and really explain what I'm doing. And so, and I found that that works. You know, at least at the Walker Ames house, where I have the most experience of doing investigating, is, you know, I've tried to build a rapport over the years with our long-term residents of the home. And by the way, I think I'm probably going to haunt that place someday. But I feel like I've built up a rapport because, you know, I get weird looks all the time on my ghost walk tours when I go in and introduce myself and introduce the group and let them know what we're doing. People kind of look at me like, what are you doing? And I like to say, well, you know, think of it as we're going into somebody's house, like they're still living here. And so I feel like I've built up a rapport with the long-term residents of this location. And I think it helps, and it, you know, helps to have a better conversation when you're actually investigating. And it certainly makes me feel a lot better, like I said, about going into creepy places in the dark if I just think, oh, it's a person. And by the way, you know, I think most investigators would agree, the scariest thing on a paranormal investigation is the living. It's the living people that they're either messing with you to scare you because they're your buddies or whatever. You know, that's just, or, you know, someone's just, you know, being a jerk, whatever. But it's the living that are more scary than anything. However, your mind can start get a hold of you if you're in a place, you know, has a lot of reports of haunted phenomena. And so keeping that human element, that's just kind of what I wanted. My point was realize that spirits, they've got emotions and personalities. And so if you just approach it with that in mind, I think it's going to help you look at things differently and and be more clear-minded and not you know, freaked out or anything. So, but that's going to bring us to our special guest, Ben Robison. We're going to pay the bills here and take a quick station break. It's 20 past the hour. When we come back, we're going to have special guest Ben Robison with us. All right, we'll see you on the flip side on Let's Talk Radio, WLTKDB.com.
We are controlling transmission.
WLTK DB. Let's talk. Patreon is a place for creators. We're one of them. Visit our Patreon page at patreon.com/WLTKDB. Check out all the unique support tiers we offer. You can get early release episodes, station mugs and t-shirts, free station service work, and much more. Help the station reach its $1,000 per month goal to make our station totally ad-free. Patreon.com/WLTKDB. We appreciate your support. Ever wanted to host your own radio show? If your answer is yes, then the time to act is now. WLTK DB Let's Talk is now accepting new programming more affordable than ever. You create the show idea and we'll take care of the rest. Not only do we create your program intro and provide broadcast training, but also syndicate you to popular outlets like Apple and Google Podcasts, iHeartRadio, Spotify, and more. You get all of this starting at $100 per month. 3 packages to choose from and built to make your wallet happy. Contact us at WLTKDB.com with your show idea, and let's bring your dream to life. All topics accepted, and you have full rights to your program. Contact us today and reserve your spot on WLTKDB. Let's talk. What are you waiting for? Let's do this.
Well, they say that you're a fool. You believe in magic.
Welcome back to the Paranormal Pete Show. I'm your host, Peter Orbea on Let's Talk Radio. It's 22 past the hour, episode 6. Can't believe we're in the new year. But I'm really excited to bring in my good friend, great investigator. This guy knows his stuff. No pressure. But my special guest, Ben Robison. How you doing, man?
Good. How are you doing, man?
Happy that it's a new year.
Yeah, no joke. I'm so ready to start afresh.
Yeah, exactly. And I think Ben and I, as pointed out by my beautiful wife, Molly, earlier today, we both have last names that everyone mispronounces.
Mm-hmm.
So I've heard all kinds of things, but so I wanted to make sure and get that right.
Thank you. I do appreciate it.
I think he got after me one time, and I've had it right since. But
I try to kindly, remind people, hey, it's not Robinson, it's not Robison, it's actually Robison. But as you know, people are going to do what they're going to do, and they say it, a variety of different ways.
They're going to perceive it in different ways, right?
Exactly.
Just like in the paranormal field.
Exactly.
Yeah. Well, hey, quick before we dive in on all the cool stuff that you do, I did get a question through the Facebook stream, and I'll answer that real quick from Danielle. So thanks for asking a question. She asked, do you get to choose when they speak to you as a medium? And ultimately, yes, because if I don't want to be bothered, I can shut it off. And I think most people can. You got to learn to do that. So ultimately, for a short answer, yes, I think you get to choose. Now, sometimes it just happens, and it's always kind of whoa, surprising. But most of the time, I think you can kind of control that, and it goes with where depends on the situation you're in. What's your intent? Are you investigating? Are you at the grocery store? That's usually when someone will speak to a medium and they're not expecting it. It's when you're standing in line at the grocery store and there's somebody shows up for the person standing in front of you. So you can't always control it, but most of the time, yes. So I want to get that in there. By the way, you can comment on the Facebook feed or join the station chat at WLTKDB.com, and we'll be happy to answer or do our best to answer any questions you can throw at us. But Ben,
yes,
I met you at the Oregon Ghost Conference 7 years ago,
something like that. Yeah, it's been a while now.
Yeah, 7 years ago, and you did a presentation on unified mind theory.
Universal mind theory. Yeah.
Universal mind theory.
Yeah.
And I thought it was pretty cool. You had a neat the way you talked about it. It was a cool approach to where someone like me, who was really kind of newer with getting into things, could understand.
Right.
But seems to me like you think about this stuff a lot.
I do. It's one of those things that, when you're in this field and you're kind of looking at just data, we'll just generically refer to it that way. You see these trends, you see these patterns, and this is why I talk about some of the things I do about it being important that we collect this kind of stuff. But when you do that, you start seeing some, these trends that I think that were kind of speaking to me in a respect. And so I wanted to delve in and kind of dig a little bit deeper and, see if there was any credence or anything to back it.
Yeah, exactly. Give credence to any theories or anything out there.
Mhm.
or maybe it's when you're looking at trends and everything, it can almost serve as a warning too
Right,
of
exactly.
what to watch out for,
Yeah.
which I think is probably more common in the field of the paranormal, is things to, hey, I won't be doing that. You know,
Right.
that's
Exactly.
not going to happen. But Ben, you've got a nonprofit group, the
Mhm.
Autonomous Studies of the Enigmatic and Paranormal.
Great job, dude.
Say that 10 times
Yeah, I
fast.
know.
It's a great, I love the name.
Thank you.
But for short, it's ASAP.
Yep.
And tell us
And
a little
that's
bit
the easy
about,
way to say it.
that's the quick way to say it.
Yep.
Although I think the full title is very regal sounding.
Thank you. I thought it was when I made it too, but
Yeah.
it's one of those, mixed reviews on.
Yeah, well, it kind of makes me think of, you should have been like in the 1880s with the SPR, the Society for Psychical Research, and you would have been up there. I have formed a new group.
Therefore, have I figured out? No.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's
exactly.
a nonprofit. But for everybody listening out there, tell us a little bit about it.
Well, it kind of starts really with the beginnings of Port. Port I co-founded years ago, back in, technically it would have been like 2007, and we didn't do anything for the first year as far as like cases go, because we were really wanting to develop process and procedure. We wanted to have some structure to the way we were doing our investigations.
Okay.
So that itself, Port is its own story, and when that ended and just basically retired the group, I had already started ASAP, and I wanted to do something, because one of the problems I ran across was a lot of people have really good intentions. For example, they want to be involved in this field of work, but they don't realize what can be involved.
Right.
So I had a lot of people come and go, and some of that's just learning experiences on my end and learning how to manage people and an organization of its own. But then there's just that people really didn't realize how much was involved or could be involved with a case study. So I wanted to kind of start ASAP on fresh steps with the ability to have low overhead, meaning I didn't have a bunch of people I was managing, whatnot. And it was, at that time, it was just myself. But I also wanted, and one of the things that kind of came to my mind while I was running Port, I really didn't like how I wasn't working with the teams around me in the local areas or anywhere if the opportunity arose. So I wanted ASAP to also open up the doors and say, hey, I want to bring in people I consider consultants, and I want them to be able to, help us on cases. They can provide us, expertise in areas. Some of this relies on even their real world jobs, their expertise, their skill sets and things like that. But it was a great opportunity for me to really start afresh and get some better, just a more efficient design, I guess, is a better way to look at it.
Yeah, and so the consultants, excuse me, kind of is, so it's not like somebody who's actually on the team, or they're not actually joining the team, but you can bring them in and did you do did you do any sort of vetting for your consultants, before you bring anybody in?
It's a matter of experience and time working with them. For example, I've worked with Dama Stearns, I've worked with Casey Goodwin, I've worked with Michael White, William Becker, a lot of people. Jay Verberg is another consultant, Neil McNeil, Kayla Ohala is also a consultant. The way I vetted these individuals was really just based upon hey, I've had enough conversations with you that make me feel like we kind of align, or we're thinking the same thing. We're not doing these case studies for different reasons. We're really wanting to try to, help the field out. And I invite them to help out in case studies, and that's obviously a way for me to be a little bit flexible too, with the size and scope of a case study. I can
Right.
bring in more consultants or less and whatnot. But the vetting is just mostly from time around these individuals and the
Yeah.
conversations we've had, and some of it working on cases. Some of them have invited me and Nicole as well, to investigate and on their case studies too.
So do you, when you get a case with ASAP, do you consider pretty much every case a case study, or I mean, is it just an investigation? I mean, do you stick with it?
Mhm.
Even after your initial interviews, your initial investigation, do you kind of follow up and stick with it?
For the most part, I do. Depending on the case and how uh, involved it was, how much uh, you feel that the client needs some, reassurance or some checking in on it. It's a case by case
Yeah.
situation, but no case is ever really closed with ASAP. Only for the fact that I just feel like that would be kind of a disservice. That's kind of making my mind up before there's any proof of what I'm even doing out there.
Yeah.
So I just rather just
Yeah.
kind of keep the cases open. But some of them, like I said, you check in with from time to time, and some of them you don't even have to touch base. Some of them contacts have kind of gone old and outdated, and so you
Sure.
lose contact, and they would need, our contact information hasn't changed, but their end. So there's sometimes a loss of communication there.
Right, and that just kind of goes along with life. But
Exactly.
I love that when you were talking about, depending on how involved, the case is, how much time and everything. I love that you said that it was, depends on if the client needs help and following up, and that you didn't say depends on how much evidence I got.
Yeah.
So I
Well,
think that's a really important point there. And I love that you said that.
thank you. Yeah, and I agree. It's an important dynamic that often probably isn't considered very much by a lot of folks that are in the field, for the fact that um, you know you have to look at each situation as a unique set of conditions, and also you have to kind of try to figure out your intention first on how to help them, or even if it's not about help, it's about curiosity, or their intention. What are they trying to get out of you by having you there? Is it to just figure
Right.
out what's going on? Is it to get them out of a lease? I don't You never know. I mean, it could be a
Right.
mixed bag, but yeah.
Yeah, I think it's great. And another thing you kind of touched on that I wanted to make a comment was, when you're talking about consultants and you're having conversations, and you get to a point where you feel like they're thinking the same thing. And it's kind of funny. Episode 2, when I had Casey Goodwin on the
Mhm.
show, he said almost the same thing when it came to your first year after starting and investigating. You didn't take any cases, that you really
Yeah,
tried
him
to
and
come up with processes and
it's
controls.
it's amazing how well closely aligned me and Casey are on these particular facets. But yeah, I mean, we're like, when we first met, we were exchanging information about, like, yeah, I'm operating this way and that way, and I mean, we were like, wow, okay, we're very much alike. And then as the years have carried on, you see that we're very alike in those respects too. So
Yeah.
I'm amongst good company as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, and you have to be to enjoy it and to do things in the way that you want to do it. So,
Correct.
yeah, no, that's awesome. And you and Casey and a couple other guys that you mentioned, we'll talk about a little bit later. You guys, big project that you guys are working on as well. But
Indeed.
so I kind of want to know a little bit about Ben and what got Ben into the paranormal.
Mhm.
And funny side note, I didn't know that you lived in Boise, where I'm from.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's crazy.
I'm a Boise State fan.
Me too.
Yeah. I love the area. I had some wild adventures while I lived in Boise, so it's always been a very important place, in
Yeah.
my upbringing.
Well, hello to any people from Boise out there.
Yes.
I was just like, what? Small world. Holy
Yeah.
smokes.
Yeah.
That's where I'm from. That's where I was born and raised.
Yeah.
So
I remember what was it? Is it called hold on, Hot Springs Avenue?
Warm Springs Avenue.
Warm Springs, that's it. Yeah, Warm Springs. It's been so many years since I've
Yeah.
been there, but yeah, Warm Springs Avenue used to have all those really fancy. Well, no, it didn't have as many of the fancy old Victorian houses on it. And then I don't remember when it was, in the 80s or something like that.
Yeah, I
They
think late
moved a
80s.
bunch of them
Yeah.
onto Warm Springs, and now that's why there's so many of them, right?
Yeah, those houses are so cool.
Yeah, there's so many with hidden rooms. That's the
Yeah.
kind of stuff I really dig.
I've always like dreamed of living on that street.
Mhm. Same here. Same here.
And now, my life now, I mean, that would be awesome. And, I spent a lot of time at the Idaho State Penitentiary, not
Yeah.
not for those reasons, because it's closed, but spent a lot of time there as a kid. And
Yeah, I went through the tours on that as well.
yeah, it's something I look back on a lot and remember how I felt in certain places and kind of putting two and two together with my
Mhm.
life now. And so I just think it's so cool, and I just wanted to throw that in there.
Isn't that prison, just real quick on that? Isn't that prison the one where the guy dug himself out, and when he popped out on the other side, they were waiting for him? Wasn't that?
I don't remember that story, but it's very possible.
Yeah, I remember when I did a tour, they were talking about it, and the guy had collected like spoons and used them as shovels and created a tunnel and basically got out of his cell, and I think came up in the yard, and they were just standing there waiting for him.
Oh man. Yeah, I probably heard that story and wasn't paying attention, because I was younger, but the story that I always remember and been just always it affected me in some way was the guy who was going to be executed, and when they went to get him out, he climbed up to the top of the cell block and did a swan dive off of it, landed on his head, cracked the solid concrete, and he's still alive even after that fall. And then he eventually died from his injuries. But
Right.
the fact that he jumped like 4 stories, like face first, like he hit literally face first on the
Total
concrete.
intention to kill himself.
Yeah.
And then kind of botched it, kind of.
Yeah. And that seems like a pretty surefire way to do that.
Yeah.
But I love that place, and hope to
Great
get
place.
back there at some point. And I see a
Mhm.
few TV shows have been there, so
Mhm.
yeah. But anyways, I love it there. But it's just what a small world out there, and
Yeah.
but I wanted to kind of know, for everybody listening out there, by the way, we're on Let's Talk Radio, WLTKDB.com. And I mean, do you have a first experience that it's something that's ingrained into you? It was an experience. What was that kind of made you go, what the heck?
Well, when I was I think I was like 4 years old or something like that, which is a really early age to try to remember things. So it's, one of those things, it's that's what makes it so interesting is I still remember it so vividly.
Wow.
My father was staying for a short period of time in his parents, my grandparents' basement, and he had a room down there with a one of those hide beds. And this is, I mean, this has got to be like 1980 or something like that.
Yeah.
And so, we're down there hanging out and sleeping, and we awake, and it is like this beam of light coming through into the basement, and
Wow.
and this full body apparition is literally manifesting in front of us. And both my dad and I sat up, and we were like, what the hell? And I'm just trying to understand at the tender age of 4. I probably don't even
Sure.
understand what I'm looking at, but later
Yeah.
on, when he explained what happened and we talked about it later in years, that's what took place. But it kind of lit up the room and manifested, and it had kind of female qualities to it, so that's why I've always felt like it was maybe a female
Mhm.
of origin, but don't know. Other because it lasted so briefly after she manifested, dissipated.
Just gone.
Yeah, and so having that happen at such a early age, really, like, I mean, I know I remember seeing the perplexed look on my father's face. I was just not understanding it, and to remember it so well over all these years, 40 years. It's definitely a pivotal piece in my life with regards to the supernatural, or potentially the supernatural.
Yeah, and it's such an early age, and I think it's the fact that your dad saw the same thing. I think that's crazy.
Now,
Uh,
I've asked him since then,
I was gonna
like
ask, has he
in
talked
later,
about it?
yeah, recent years, I've asked him,
Uh-huh.
and I get I think he kind of has forgotten about it. I think I'll have to talk to him again about it. But like I was, because it's one of those things you want to go, okay, am I making this up in my head, or is this, really something that happened? And he was like, I do recall some weird thing happening, but he said he just couldn't remember the details to it. So
Yeah.
um that's the only downside is, he doesn't have as strong of a memory of it as I do.
Yeah. Well, I think, just it's human. We just move on,
Yeah.
from things, and
And that happens a lot more than people want to either let on to or realize happens.
yeah, we move on.
Mhm.
We have bad memories in a lot of cases.
Yeah.
But so that's so cool that it was like a beam of light. Um, did it seem to come from within the room? Can you recall that? Or
Yeah. So
I'm
there,
interested in the light.
I remember there was this white, what would you call it? It was like a closet, but it wasn't built into the wall. It was like a big armoire, and it had
Okay.
like a closet side to it, and then it had like shelf sides to it to store stuff in it. This thing, whatever it was that presented itself to us or showed up, manifested right in front of that. And it looked like the light was coming from within the room, because now that I look back and I'm trying to be analytical again, we're talking 40 years ago, but regardless, trying to look at the situation with a critical lens and think, was it some kind of light that came down from outside and shone through the window in the basement and then caused this? It's hard to say. I
Yeah.
really, there's no way to go back now, and that's one of the things
Sure.
I feel very strongly about, is personal experiences really are a vital piece to the paranormal research that we do,
Yeah.
because those are what shake people to their core, that make them believers or otherwise, those profound experiences.
Oh yeah, they're the most impactful and the most flawed at the same
Yeah.
time. But,
Yes, exactly.
but like you said, they do shake you to your core. And I just thought it's so interested in the, it was a beam of light.
Yeah.
And some of the readings and work that I've done over the past few years, it does seem like spirits travel kind of along a beam of light, and that's maybe how they get back and forth.
Like a
To
vessel of sorts.
yeah, it's like a little transporter sort of
hmm
thing, And so that's interesting with the beam of light. So, and I think it's funny your dad's kind of forgotten.
Yeah. Well, that's, I mean, I know that it's, for me, there's several memories that my children have brought up, and I don't remember every one of them, and they're
Yeah.
profound to them, but
Yeah.
I've forgotten some of the details to them. So
Yeah.
like you said, it's one of those things that just happens. And
Yeah.
this is just one of the things he didn't pocket. And for me, I did, probably because it was such a unique thing and I was 4.
Yeah. No, exactly. So I wanted to also ask, I've heard you talk a little bit about it before, and read, that you lived in, a pretty open-minded house. And, myself, it was, a lot of science fiction.
Oh
that
yeah.
was a thing. And I felt like that really opened me up, just to having an open mind naturally.
Mhm.
I mean, do you kind of feel the same way that, especially by the way, I talked about this with Casey. I think we grew up in the best, like one of the
Era.
best eras of, movies and music, but
Yeah.
movies and characters and shows and stuff. But maybe that's just being nostalgic. But do you kind of feel like growing up in that environment, it has benefited you today with
Yeah,
what you do?
I do. I absolutely do, for the simple fact that um just having that openness alone, openness to what could be, what can be,
Right.
I think that's a for some people there's a wall or something blocking them from being able to see past that and see what could be. I don't think that with the way I was raised, with this openness or the shared experiences, that was the thing. It's just like anything, you can inundate a child with information and freak them out or make them concerned and anxious for no reason. But if you're sharing it with the intention to educate them and open their mind a little bit, I think that's a big thing. And
Yeah.
so I was always one of those kids that had a lot of questions and, would ask my father, and he would answer, to his best capabilities. And I've done the same with my children. But, I think that openness is very critical.
Especially when you're researching the unknown.
Yeah. Yeah.
With
I
the
mean, if you've already
paranormal
got your mind made up on what is the unknown, I mean,
not much going to change
why do it?
Yeah, exactly. And Michael White had made a comment about personal experiences. What may be profound to one person might not be so to another.
Exactly. And that's true. I
Yep.
mean, when I tell my story, there could be somebody out there that going, you were 4 years old, kid. You don't remember crap from then,
Yeah.
there's no way that. And it's not profound to them. But for
Yeah.
me, it was. And I remember I've never forgotten those details over
Yeah.
the years.
Yeah. My first experience that I can remember vividly when I was 7.
Mhm.
And, I've talked about it before. My grandpa and I witnessed the same thing, 2 apparitions showing up in the middle of a highway, and we drove right through them and they were just
Wow.
gone.
That's
And
crazy cool.
yeah, and I still remember it really clearly, but he and I never talked about it again.
Mhm.
You know, it was something, you know, and that might be his generation. He was, you know, World War II generation, and they didn't talk about a whole lot of stuff.
It was such a
And
different generation. It was taboo. You were
yeah, exactly.
a weirdo if you talked about that kind of stuff.
Yeah. I mean, he looked at me and said, you know, uh, he was from a different generation, so I'll say it a little differently than he did. But he said, "Do you see them old Native Americans in the road?"
Yeah.
And that's what I saw. And I said, "Yes, there was two of them." And he said, the first thing he says is, "Don't tell your grandma," because
Wow.
she was on the other side of me sleeping in the truck.
Oh
You know,
wow.
we were driving, and that was it. and I and you know, I think he comes around me at, well, my whole family, so I'm going to ask him one of these times, hey, what'd you think about that?
Right.
Because I
Get the
never
answers.
it never came up with him again. And
Yeah.
it just kind of stuck with me, and I just kind of held on to that, you know, that experience. So I think it's great to be, you know, open,
Mhm.
um you know, with the intent of education, and like you said, opening the mind with the kids. And
Yeah. I mean,
you
don't
know,
feed them an agenda. Don't feed them, fluff and extra stuff. Just, kind of get to the meat and potatoes of it and explain, that this is something that people around the world,
yep,
over many, many centuries have experienced. And some of it's very explainable and some of it's not.
yep.
You can get really complex and use big words, and I've been known to do that, but anymore, it's kind of one of those things. I'm like, look, we don't have to overcomplicate this. It's just a matter of, whether or not you're a believer or not, and if you've had experiences to help shape you into that,
Yeah, yep.
and whether you don't, and there's nothing wrong with either or.
Yeah, exactly. I've been trying to live by, you know, we don't know much and anything's possible. So, you know, I mean, what the hell do I know, really? What the hell do
Right.
any of us know, really?
Right.
You know, anything's
Yeah.
possible.
And that's why it's like when you hear people, say expert, you know, it's uh, it's just a dicey road to go down. There's no expert in this field really, because we don't have anything proven. I mean, there are some very, very extremely knowledge people, whether it's their experience from many, many investigations or case studies and such, to people who have actually done the hard work and gone through the rigors of acquiring the title as a parapsychologist even.
Yeah. No, yeah, totally agree. Yeah,
Yeah.
and often, you know, it's hard to not call somebody an expert though, because that's the first word that comes to your mind when you know.
When I did my radio show, I used the word often too, and it was one of those you kind of went, oh, I didn't mean it. Oh, I shouldn't have said that. But we're all doing our best, and that's an important thing to keep in mind, is that
Yeah.
I know we'll probably be talking on this in a little bit, but like one of my hypothesis that I have, some of the wording even in it is a little outdated as far as I'm concerned, because my paradigm has changed, over the years. And I think it should. Like, I think
Hmm.
it's important. Like, I shouldn't be the same investigator I was, 5, 6, 7, plus years ago. I
Oh
should
yeah,
be
for
more
sure.
advanced, more well-rounded, more polished, more knowledgeable, more open,
Yeah.
not go and less gullible, less willing to jump on the bandwagon for a plethora of different types of things.
Exactly. And I think it's a part of our soul arc, each of us as an individual. It's a part of the human experience is to grow
Mm-hmm.
and change. And if you can never stop learning, or you know, you feel like you never learn enough, I think you're always going to be, you know, in a good place and on the right path if you're always, you know, continually trying to grow. I know that I mean, if I was doing things the same way when I started doing paranormal investigation, I would look at myself and be like, what the heck are you doing, man? Yeah.
Oh, same for me. I mean, I'm no
Yeah.
different. I'm no better. And I know I've had my rants on Facebook about, what I do and don't like. But I'm no better than anybody. It's just a matter of, when you get to that point where you see things differently, you see things a little bit more clearly, you're
Yeah.
a little bit more objective and critical. You don't see things the same way,
Yeah. Exactly.
as you used to.
Exactly. And I think, that kind of stuff makes a good researcher.
Mhm.
And, do you like the research side of things more, or do you like the investigation side of things more when we're talking about paranormal investigations?
Well, your question was, do you like? I don't like the research. And that's just being honest. The
Yeah.
research is necessary and it's very, very, very important,
Sure.
but it's not fun. And that's why, like I told you earlier, I lost so many people when I was running port, because I mean, I had one lady one time literally gave me her membership fee, and I said, okay, get me a bio and a picture to put on our website so I can add you and welcome to the team and all this stuff, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh man, that's so much work. I didn't know I was going to have to just keep my money. Thank you though. And that was the end of her time with port. And I was like, what the? I didn't even ask
Wow.
you to do anything on a case.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Imagine if you would have been like, here's 10 hours of audio.
Exactly. She would have melted.
Do
She would
you,
have just
so,
evaporated.
yeah. So we're going to be going to a top of hour break here in a couple of minutes. But when we come back, we're going to talk about the CERM hypothesis. So I want to kind of dig into that a little bit and pick your brain on that. And also ask you about some other experiences you may have had from other parts of the paranormal field.
Sure.
And then let's talk about the case study documentary that you're working on. But so I look forward to that. But real quick before we go, what's your favorite type of data to review?
Audio. Yeah, audio, just because it's the most fruitful so far.
Yeah.
It's the most consistent.
Yeah, me too. I'm right there with you.
Yeah.
Somebody on Lauren Linker on Facebook said she loves the research.
Hey, good. I mean, good for you. There's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah.
You gotta find your niche and run with it.
Yeah, exactly. So, well, we're going to pay the bills here at the station and take a break. We're at the top of the hour at the Paranormal Pete Show and special guest Ben Robison. We'll be right back. I will see you on the flip side on Let's Talk Radio, WLTKDB.com.
We are controlling transmission.
WLTK DB.
Thanks, Todd. That was awesome, Ben.
Radio. WLTK DB.
Oops, sorry, I had you muted. Yep.
That was fun, man.
Yeah, I'm liking it.
Yeah, so I figure we'll get into the CERM. It's kind of funny to say that. Let's get into the CERM.
Let's get into the CERM.
Yeah. Does that sound good?
Yeah, that sounds great.
Awesome.
Yeah, I'm having a great time, and I'm hoping you're enjoying it.
Oh, hell yeah.
Sweet.
Yeah. I've been lucky to have people I know pretty well on the show so far. I haven't had to really dive outside of my circle yet.
Right.
So, you guys are all just so hard to talk to.
Yeah, the gift of gab runs deep with us.
Yep, that's fine. That's a good stuff.
So what kind of microphone do you got?
It's a cheap, it's a Tonor. I don't know.
Oh, sounds good.
Oh, does it?
Yeah, you sound good. I remember in Casey's episode, it sounded like your volume was a little too far down in the actual post recording or master. I don't know. And so I would remember thinking, well, that seemed low, but other than that, the quality sounded good.
Oh. Well, I will admit that I had it set up wrong.
Oh, yeah, this microphone, I don't know if you remember, I brought it to the Port Gamble Ghost Conference and left the cable at home. It's got a proprietary cable. So I've been guilty of messing up with my microphones too.
Yeah. Hey, I'm going to stop. I'm going to stop video for a second. I guess we're on Facebook Live.
Oh, okay.
Good thing we didn't say anything bad about anybody.
Yeah.
All right. We'll be back in a little bit.
Don't let QuickBooks and spreadsheets slow you down anymore. Now is the time to upgrade to NetSuite by Oracle, the world's #1 cloud business system. NetSuite gives you visibility and control over your financials, HR, inventory, e-commerce, and more. Join the over 24,000 companies using NetSuite right now. Schedule your free product tour right now at netsuite.com/Fox. netsuite.com/Fox.
Concerns growing around the U.S. as a new, more contagious variant of COVID-19, first detected in England, continues to spread here. New York Governor Andrew Cuomo says it has been found in New York State.
The UK strain is highly problematic, and it could be a game changer.
Cuomo says there is what he called a foot race between vaccinations and hospitalizations. A self-described American nationalist who police in New York City say left a hoax explosive device in a car at a shopping mall yesterday has turned himself in. 22-year-old Louis Shanker surrendered early this morning in Brooklyn. Shanker, who on social media describes himself as a patriot and supporter of President Trump, left the fake bomb in a Tesla in the mall's parking garage. He was previously arrested in December 30th after police say he torched a poster attached to a police barricade in Manhattan. The Trump administration completes action on one of its biggest environmental rollbacks.
It's likely last major rollback of regulations affecting the environment before President Trump leaves office. The Environmental Protection Agency announcing it's strengthening transparency and finalizing a rule limiting what scientific research it can use to formulate regulations. Under it, scientists would need to disclose raw data involved in public health studies for findings to be considered when determining the danger of pollutants or other threats. Critics say disclosing identities would jeopardize medical confidentiality and cripple the agency's ability to protect public health. Lillian Wu, Fox News.
American factories grew in December at the fastest pace in more than 2 years as manufacturing continued to fare better during the pandemic than the battered services sector. The Institute for Supply Management reported its gauge of manufacturing activity rose to 60.7% last month, the highest reading since August 2018. I'm Lisa Lacera. This is Fox News.
Is QuickBooks slowing your business down? Do you have challenges managing inventory, project profitability, or just getting paid fast enough? Get your business to a better place and graduate to NetSuite today. Stop paying for multiple systems that don't give you the information you need when you need it. Ditch the spreadsheets and all the old software you've outgrown. Now is the time to upgrade to NetSuite by Oracle, the world's #1 cloud business system. NetSuite gives you visibility and control over your financials, HR, inventory, e-commerce, and more. Everything you need, all in one place, instantaneously. Whether you're doing $1 million or hundreds of millions in revenue, save time and money with NetSuite.
Join the over 24,000 companies using NetSuite right now. Let NetSuite show you how they'll benefit your business with a free product tour at netsuite.com/Fox. Schedule your free product tour right now at netsuite.com/Fox. netsuite.com/Fox.
Of all the radio stations in the world, we're one of them. We are controlling transmission. WLTK DB. Let's talk. Alternative Talk Radio. WLTKDB.com.
Well, they say that you're a fool. You believe in magic.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the Paranormal Pete Show, episode 6 with special guest Ben Robison. I'm your host Pete Orbea. We're on Let's Talk Radio, WLTKDB.com. Jump on there and hit us up on the station's chat. And if you got any questions, we'll do our best to answer them. And similarly on Facebook. So yeah, coming back here for the second hour, I wanted to kind of dive into hypothesis Ben has worked on. And by the way, you can find his write-up on this at www.a-sep.org. And if you're watching on the Facebook stream, I put that as one of the first comments there, so you can find it easy. But if you want to go read this and other stuff he's got on his website, it's interesting and thought-provoking. So definitely go check that out. Check out Ben's website. It's asep.org, but that's a-sep.org. So Ben, let's talk about the CERM hypothesis, and that stands for, you like these long titles, stands for spectral emotion to radio frequency manifestation. So give us a little background on what kind of drove you to actually, I don't know if I want to say make this an official thing, or, you know, what kind of drove you to do this?
It had a lot to do with like being in the telecommunications field at that time. As a network engineer, I was really immersed into the ins and outs of how telecom works and radio frequency and things like that. So, you know, you have a kind of keen eye for that kind of thing. And when I started doing the paranormal research into my, you know, spare time and part that part of my life, I started seeing some things that kind of stood out, almost like red flags, if you will. They were, you know, like, why is it then that we're only getting little snippets when we get it? And I know there are EVPs out there that are longer, but what I'm saying is, a general rule of thumb, why are we only getting snippets for? Sorry, I didn't mean to mute myself. I just hit the. Anyways, why are we getting you know, snippets of our communications or our attempts to communicate with this you know, supposed energy or beings on the other side? And then I looked at things because I'm technical in nature. I like to, you know, examine the equipment. I like to understand it. I like to know its pros, cons, you know, all the things that I think are necessary for why I'm using it. I ask questions like, why use this then, or at all, you know? So as time went on, I was like, I started, you know, running this idea through my head. I was like, well, what if we are only getting snippets because it's actually limitations within the equipment we're using? So I started digging into that. I started reading and I tried to read more, and I found the common denominator was everything has a frequency response range. So it has a beginning and an end of its frequency that it can, you know, recognize, whether that's just monitoring and listening to, or viewing, or recording and data logging, or whatever. So I started playing around with this idea and developing it, and it kind of just started fitting together from like it just started fitting together really well in what I thought it might do. Meaning, I thought that when I started researching energy and I started researching like, you know, radio frequencies and such, that there'd be some kind of tie. And I knew that because of the type of equipment we use and the way they're designed. So as I developed this hypothesis. I've bounced it off several people that I admire and you know look to for consultation in respects, and just peer review of, you know, is this thought a stupid thought all the way through, or is it actually, you know, there's some validity to it or potential validity. It's been met with good response. People think, whether, no matter what side they're on, whether they're more, you know, intuitive or they're more technically driven like myself, I seem to get a good reception to the concept of this. And essentially, what it is I believe that just like you and I are having this conversation right now, emotions change depending on what we're talking about. You could talk about something funny, you could talk about something scary or shocking or sad, and our emotions change. We've also learned over the years that our bodies emit their own frequency, and that can be different based upon age, health, environment, you know, and so on and so forth.
Experience. Yeah.
Yeah. So I felt like the possibility is there that when I ask a question to this said supposed spirit that I think is there in this location I'm at, it might invoke them, whether it's intentional or some kind of just you know, gesture of sorts. It might invoke them to change their emotion on and response, and then therefore if they're changing their emotion, then it stands to reason that their overall frequency is changing. And if that overall frequency is changing, then that means we need to follow that frequency, follow that response as it changes. But the problem is we don't have that technology in place right now. Also, we don't have ways to like trigger other equipment I have not seen yet out there, where people are marrying several pieces of technology where, for example, if the said spirit you asked, you know, can you tell us a little bit about your life? Well, that could invoke an emotional response. It could have been a hard life for someone. And so if their emotion changes and it goes outside of the frequency response range of a particular device, in this case, we'll say a digital audio recorder, because that's what most people will be using. You're going to miss that, because that's a window. That's a limitation that device actually has. It cannot hear or record beyond that frequency or before that frequency. So if we had other devices that either overlap slightly or butted right up to those, that could trigger and record their event while it was in their frequency response range, and then pass it on to the next one following it, and so on and so forth, recording this and data logging it, we could probably get a full conversation of if spirits are really communicating to us.
Yeah. So if somehow you could have different types of data and string it all together, maybe you get, you know, a full conversation. Now in there, didn't you talk about, you know, like having a full spectrum camera that's, you know, triggered by an EMF,
Correct.
by an EMF spike?
Yeah.
Is that
So
kind of
I
what
mean,
you're talking about?
Yeah, in the article that I wrote, I just was trying to give some examples. So like if you had a digital audio recorder that was triggered by, say, something like, I mean, I've played around with the idea of having Arduino boards or the like. Are you familiar with what those are?
Not really.
They're little small computers, basically, and I mean really small. Okay.
Okay.
And it makes it nice because it's a small profile, and you can connect them to a lot of different things. And so you could, in theory, take these devices, marry them together with Arduino boards, and then let the Arduino boards command each one start recording or monitoring the frequencies that they're capable of, and logging this. And then that way we can look back later on and go, okay, well, when we asked Marianne, I'm just making up a name at the moment, you know, how her life was, she gave us a response and we were able to capture it on several mediums, you know, different devices that all digitally interface to say an Arduino board or something like that.
Right.
And then log it. And then now we have a more comprehensive, collected, I guess, just data.
Yeah.
To look back at and review for, you know, trends and or if you're getting what you want, you know, full responses, then I mean you're getting
the results.
The results that we're all trying to get, you know, when we do these recording sessions.
Yeah. So, yeah, instead of getting just a snippet, you know, and that just everyone who does paranormal investigation knows all about that. You get a piece of a word.
Yep.
Or 2 syllables that you have no idea what it said.
You know? Exactly. And you're trying to bit and piece. And then even sometimes the quality, you know, whether it's an A, you know, B or C class, comes into play. And for me, it's very rarely, I mean, almost to never almost, that I find that B or C quality EVPs are worth my time, because when I don't mean like they don't matter to what's going on. What I mean is trying to clean them up and figure out what's being said, especially when you're talking C class. But like, it's so much work, and half the time you find out it really doesn't even help at all. It's just something small, and it's there, but what did it really tell you in the long run?
You end up distorting the actual.
Yeah, you can manipulate the audio itself. Yeah, that's why, you know, a lot of people don't realize that they're modulating things also with these pieces of equipment, and you know that's just a caveat really to what we're doing or how we're collecting, and that's just something we got to figure out how to maybe avoid or to lessen. I don't know. And
I guess we just don't have the equipment. Yeah, I was just gonna say, we just don't have the equipment that has minimal or no effect on the environment that it's measuring.
Right.
You know,
yeah, I mean, there's
something, I don't know.
There's a lot of people out there that are creating apps, and they're creating these boxes and devices, and you know, I mean, I appreciate their efforts, and I really don't, you know, I don't agree with the way they're going about doing it for the most part, but I also am like, what has it really done for the field? If your device has been that earth shattering or great, and it's sold this many of it, why aren't we really any further along with our field of research? And that's my hopes, is with the CERM hypothesis to maybe inspire some engineers out there that have the know-how. I'm not a mechanical, I'm not an electrical engineer. I barely know network engineering. But, you know, my point is, you know, have the people inspired by an idea, a concept, to come in and use their expertise in their real world jobs to build something that might help us actually get more data overall.
Right. And across several mediums.
Exactly.
To get that. Yeah. Because that's ultimately what we're going for, is we want corroborated on multiple instruments.
Yep. And along with that personal experience, if I'm standing in a room with you, Pete, and we're talking and we're trying to investigate a particular phenomena, and something comes up and tugs on my shirt, and we've got devices to capture it, not only video, image, audio and EMF and all these different devices capturing it on their plane, maybe we can get more understanding as to what caused that tug feeling on my
Yeah.
shirt, or to confirm that there's nothing there at all, maybe.
And it was a spider or something.
Right.
You caught
Better
a
not be
snag
a
on the
spider,
wall or
man.
something.
It better not.
Sorry, bad visualization. Yeah, no, you got to be able to either be able to get more credible evidence, data, or you're going to be able to disprove whatever you thought the activity was.
Right.
So once you kind of came up with this and were conscientious of it, and thinking about it more, did you kind of change how you investigated it all?
I did. And actually nobody's ever asked that question. That's a good question. It helped me, I think, more logically look at things. Also, it helped me, because the whole point of a hypothesis is to kind of ultimately end up working it. Now, I can't really work this hypothesis until a device is made with the intention or the inspiration behind this concept. But I would I totally lost my train of thought just now. Wow.
Well, how did it change?
Oh,
Like,
yeah. How did it change
your
yeah.
investigations? Yeah.
So what I was doing is I was finding myself going in and actually examining more. I was setting out other pieces of equipment to watch and monitor and record, whereas before it was kind of more after the fact. Most of the review took place, and that there's nothing wrong with that, but I was trying to proactively see if I could see things in the real
moment.
time. Just like the concepts with some of those real-time recorders that are out there, but I wanted to just watch to see if there's anything going on in those realms, those frequency realms. Anyways, so my investigating style changed to more adapt to kind of almost a preparation of how to employ the CERM hypothesis into a theory of sorts.
Yeah, and did it like affect what pieces of equipment you were using, and like where, like placement, and just overall did it change? Or like, what was something that you used to use and then you stopped using?
I had bought I called it a Frank's box after Frank Sumption, who really kind of, as far as I know, kind of led the way with this whole spirit box, craze. So I had one of your typical Radio Shack radios that were hacked, so that way it just kept skipping through the channels. I don't use that anymore, and the main reason why I don't use spirit boxes at all is it's a numbers game. You can read FCC allows certain topics, certain conversations, certain types of words to even be used after certain hours of the day. And when we're working in the middle of the night on case studies and you hear unsavory words across your device, your Frank's box or Spirit box, it doesn't mean it didn't come from a radio station because it was an unsavory word. It just means that it happened during a time that they were allowed to have that kind of dialogue, and it doesn't prove anything, especially with the amount of yeses and general response type words used in advertisements during radio shows. It's there. It's the Achilles heel, in my opinion, to that device. So that's one device I don't use anymore, mostly because and I know there's advanced ones out there, flip back and forth. I get it, but it's still a numbers game. That's all I have to say about it. And it's just the numbers game. And I'm not trying to upset anybody, but it just, you know, you're going to get responses that seem like they're matched to what you're asking, because it's flipping through, I don't know how many radio stations at a time, you know?
Sure. Yeah. And, you know, I think they're fun. You know, it's interesting. I've had, you know, I think some weird stuff come through.
Well, we used one on the
you know.
Rutherglen Mansion up in Longview, Washington, and I
Okay.
can't deny it, weird things happened. Matter of fact, somebody brought an Ovulus, and I cannot stand those things. And I won't even go into that, but you know, they brought it, and there was weird responses, and that's great and everything. But if we don't understand why we're getting those responses or how the equipment we're using works,
yeah,
I mean, it's we're not getting really anywhere. We're just using somebody else's design and trusting it. And that's the other thing, right? A lot of these people make these devices. You hear a lot of people say things along the lines of, I had spiritual influence. And I'm not saying that's not possible, but to help you design a whole device and to know that when an EMF hits this high of, and the humidity drops this much and the temperature rises this much, that means murder. The word murder. You know what I mean? It's a little hard for me to swallow that a living human knew how to design a device that can interpret elemental changes, you know, environmental changes, and then comes out with a word. A little suspect.
It's, I totally see what you're getting at there. And I agree. It's a bit of a stretch. But you know, again, just our opinions.
Yeah. Exactly.
You know, one time I will say with a ghost box in the morgue here in Port Gamble, which is in the post office building, we had put an EMF meter on either side of the spirit box. And each time, you know, we thought we were getting a response, or it was a specific answer to a specific question, the meters would go off. And I thought that was interesting, that it would get a spike and it was only when we thought that there was a response coming through. And this is when I was with Olympic Peninsula Paranormal Society. And so I always thought that was interesting, that there was a spike whenever we thought we were getting an answer to something.
Right.
So that could be, you know, where we're taking another piece of equipment. Then again, is the meter picking up the radio? And was it just, you know, coincidence? I don't really know, but it seemed to line up a lot.
Yeah, and that's what I'm trying to say, is that I'm not trying to be necessarily harsh on those things. I'm just trying to look at them critical, and I've seen exactly some weird things with them too. I just don't trust that, because we'll take one of the devices I mentioned earlier. The inventor has never shared its design to the world, and that's weird, because how do you know how it's designed? How do you know it's not a bunch of just, you know, his own algorithms, you know, to scramble and make up whatever? And that's what a lot of people think is going on. But there's also a lot more people who think it's legitimate, and that's where I'm like, you can't just go off. When it comes to equipment we're using, okay, you can't just trust what anybody says. You have to do your research. You have to understand its technology. You have to understand why it's being used, or you're really not getting anywhere.
And you've got to be able to take the time to, like you said, do the research and your own testing with it. And it sounds like you're almost talking about like ghost hunting apps.
Well, yeah, there's some of those. I mean, there was a time where I was at Estes Short Park at the Stanley Hotel, and I had somebody there. This was at one of William Becker's events, and I had an individual there say, "Hey, I recorded something," and so we had him play it back, and you could hear all this like chanting and almost like weird, almost different bells or I don't know. It was some kind of noise that was
Chimes or
going.
something.
Yeah, something going on in there with it. Well, I started asking questions. I was like, okay, what did you use to record this? Well, I used my phone. Oh, okay. All right. So what did you use on your phone? The native recording app that came with the phone? Or is this a third party thing? And they were like, oh, it's third party. And I said, okay, what is it? And they said, and I don't remember even the name. I just know it had the name Ghost in it. And I was immediately like, okay. So then we took two phones, I think it was, and we set them side by side, used one of them with the native app, let them record with their phone and recorded, in the same room at the same time.
Right.
The results were different because what was happening was whoever designed that software, they had set it up so that way it inserted these noises, these sounds into it. So it sounded like some ghostly communication going on.
Yeah. And that's a great test that you did there. And so for everybody listening out there, are you, if you're an investigator and you're out there, are you checking your own equipment like that, or checking, when you think you get an experience? And I hope you are. Well, I want to kind of move along a little bit because we've only got half an hour left here. It's 33 past the hour in the second hour of the show here. And I want to ask, what is your favorite piece or your most reliable piece of equipment that you use?
Well, I could give you that classic, my own noodle, but I know what you're asking, and I would probably say my trusty old tri-field meter, natural EMF meter specifically. I like that one a lot. And it's because it's a multi-axis meter, so it's measuring the north and south pole, but then it has another antenna or measuring device in it that marries those numbers together to give you like a sum. And it's a great device. It's been used by some renowned researchers out there and people who I respect and admire. So I've done my research on it, and that's the one thing I try to tell people all the time is there's no device, and this one included, there's no device on the planet right now that can prove the existence of ghosts. But this device is the best device I've found so far to help me have the best foundation to work from when monitoring these fields.
Sure.
So that's my favorite device.
And do you think that, in your opinion, it's got a leg up on most other electromagnetic field measuring devices because it's measuring natural, electromagnetic field versus like a K2 meter, that's going to pick up every electrical device that comes close to it?
Right. Well, I think it's got a leg up in a couple ways. One is, like I said earlier, it's multi-axis, capable of reading the north and south poles. But it also has the ability to have, you can buy a data logger for this device and then actually get data logging, even though the tri-field meter is an analog device. You can still get a data logger to log its readings and whatnot. The other way I think it has a leg up is just that it's like you said, it's a natural EMF. It's tuning out man-made frequencies, so it's only looking at or measuring those ones outside of it.
Yeah, because there's so much electrical pollution everywhere you
Mhm.
go. Man-made, I'll say man-made
Yes.
electrical pollution
And we have to
everywhere
contend
you
with that.
go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
One of the things I talk
And
about in the CERM theory is that, that these amounts of influxes of frequencies around us may in turn fuel some of these supernatural events that we are experiencing, because it's kind of like, how some people think that that's why they take the battery
yeah,
power.
take your juice. Yeah.
And yeah, so it could be that.
Yeah, and then you could also take it one step farther, and that us, the living, are affecting the environment. With like you mentioned our own bodies have our own frequency. And that's where you get into the parapsychology world. Of if I'm investigating and I've had just a bad day. You might get an EVP that's like F you,
Mhm. Right. Yeah, and that has a lot to do with the capabilities, if possible, of reading, quote unquote, the room. It's just like, I think we all have experienced this at some point in time of our life. You walk into a room you've never been in or haven't been in for a while, and there's an individual you've never met there, and immediately, for whatever reason, you don't like them.
Yeah.
I don't know why, but you just don't. And
Yep.
sometimes the feeling's even mutual. You can see it off them.
Yeah.
So maybe this is part of the whole, thing, that we're able to sense other people in that respect. And
Yeah. It's like a form of ESP almost.
yeah.
Yeah. Exactly. So so the tri-field meter is your fave, and I it's a great tool. And it sounds like, if I were to ask you what advice would you give to people out there looking to buy some new equipment, it would be to do the research.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, when you go to buy a digital audio recorder, anyone's going to work. I'm not trying to tell people you got to spend hundreds, if not thousands of dollars.
This
You
brand
can,
only. Yeah.
yeah, you can. But what I'm saying is do your research. You can find out what online, there's specifications for everything nowadays. And so you could take an Olympus, recorder, or a Sony digital audio recorder, and look up that model number and look up the specifications, and it will tell you what the frequency response range is of that particular device. So if you're wanting to broaden your window, you might look for a device that actually has a bigger frequency response range. So I have Olympus digital audio recorders, and they have a frequency response range of so much. And then I have a Tascam, which is like a 4-track portable, studio like recorder.
Nice.
And it's got a wider frequency response range. And then you can go into like the Zooms, like the H6 and stuff that do HD audio. You're going to get even a better window of opportunity there. So, it depends on what you dump into it. But I just try to tell people, just know that's maybe why you're not getting any responses, or some, or,
It just might not have a wide enough range of response range.
Based on what I think,
Yeah, sure. No, I think your theories, I think there's something to it too, because it just makes sense to me. And just the experiences I've had and stuff. So it totally makes sense. But I do want to change gears a little bit, because we got about 20 minutes left and I want to cover some stuff.
Sure.
So now I think I've read somewhere that you had an experience in, maybe it was up on the Olympic Peninsula.
Yep.
Involving a big hairy thing.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about your experience with a possible Sasquatch.
The great thing is it's a really short and sweet story, and I'm not joking. It's very short.
Okay. Yeah. Right.
I had what they called a hardship license. At the age of 12, I was allowed to drive. Now, anybody familiar with Washington State knows about the Olympic Peninsula. And in the 80s, this would have been the 80s, late 80s. I had one of the hardship license that they awarded kids in rural areas. So I was allowed to drive around without an actual bona fide license, but I was only allowed to drive around in that area.
Sure.
So here I am at 12. I'm driving down the road. This is no joke. This is not, man, this is really how it went down. And here I am driving down this road. And on the left-hand side of the road is a clear-cut section of the Olympic National Forest. On the right-hand side of the road is untouched. It hasn't been logged or anything yet.
Okay.
It's starting to snow, and it's I think it's in the middle of the day, or maybe late or early after, or I don't remember exactly what time of day, but I remember it was getting closer towards dusk than it was like around lunchtime. But anyways, it's snowing. It's starting to snow and stick. So I'm driving down this road, and I see something come out from the left-hand side that I told you was all clear-cutted, all logged, and cross across the highway in no time flat, but didn't look like it was running. It had a really large gait.
Yeah, it was like walking.
More like a walk, exactly. Really fast, distance covered, but didn't look like the thing was trying to run or make that kind of distance in that kind of time. So I tried to stop down the road where I saw it, and it was all dark haired colored, tall looking. And I tried to stop down the road where I thought I saw it, because that was initially what I thought. I was like, I just saw a freaking Bigfoot. And I drive down there hoping to see, foot tracks or footprints in the snow, but there were none, or none where I showed up at. And then I had a vehicle show up right behind me, so I had to keep going. So I didn't get to stay around and look further. But that was one experience. Apparently I was told by parents that I had another potential Sasquatch experience when I was a little kid up in the Columbia River Gorge here between Oregon and Washington.
Yeah. And so the one that you saw when you were driving, I mean, did it look tall?
Yeah, it looked very tall. It seemed like it was very upright. And the way the road sat a little higher than the actual forest floor did.
Okay.
So the clear-cutted side sat down lower than the right-hand side, because the right-hand side hadn't been logged yet. And so it looked, it was normal, intact.
Yeah. Sure.
Yeah. So anyways, it just made it across that road in like 2 or 3 steps, a 2-lane highway, and like 2 or 3 steps, and was back in the woods again and gone. So
yeah, that's cool. So did you, I mean, do you, I consider, Bigfoot chasing, investigating, whatever you want to call it. I mean, that's kind of part of the paranormal too.
Yeah,
it's
I think
next to normal.
Right.
So, I mean, have you ever gone out and tried to, do some research, or is it just something, you'd love to have an experience if you have one, and hopefully you could record it?
I have good intentions every year to try to get out and do some what I like to call more tracking, or more along the line. I don't like calling it hunting, but like, just kind of like a field research of sorts. but I have a good intentions pretty much every year to get out. And if I'm honest, it hasn't happened in a little while. Last time I did, I was with a good buddy of mine, also colleague. We went out into the woods of the Skamania area.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. And we got a pretty far out there, and we were about 5 minutes from where we were going to start doing some scouting, and got shot at several times by who knows. I don't know what we came across. I don't know.
Whoa.
Some kind of drug operation out in the middle of, I mean, we were out in nowhere.
Yeah.
Way out nowhere.
Holy smokes. You're lucky.
Yeah, it was pretty intense for a minute. We got shot at, and I had to boogie out of there in my SUV, which was not good on it. It got all scratched up because the trail had brush all the way up to the road. You know,
Oh
so
man.
you would drive down it doing like 3 miles an hour, but when I'm getting shot at, I'm doing 45, 50 trying to get out of there.
Getting out of there, yeah.
Yeah. So that was the
That's-
last time, but we did have something interesting happen. We were driving along, and I have a video of it up on my YouTube of where we were driving along. It was dark out, and all of a sudden we had the windows down, and the strongest smell of urine just hit us like a ton of bricks. I mean, it was really intense.
Wow.
I've been in the woods
Yuck.
plenty throughout my life,
Mhm.
and I've had things, I guess, similar to it, but nothing as strong and so just foul.
Yuck. Yuck.
So I don't know what it was. I can't say that was Sasquatch either, but it was very interesting that we had it while we were out in that part of the country when that's a known area for Sasquatch
Yeah.
to be sighted.
Oh, totally.
Yeah.
Totally. Well, I'm going to make it a point this year to look more in my surrounding neighborhood here,
Mhm.
because we've got about 4,500 acres of forest right next to little Port Gamble here. And I had an experience a few years ago of hearing these just god awful noises coming out of the woods. And it just sounded like these two bears going at it is what
Wow.
it sounded like. And then there was also like some sort of rhythmical wood knocking going on underneath all this sound.
Huh.
And then it kind of slowed down, the the groaning, and then it kind of sounded more like a human type vocalization, kind of like
Right.
a and then and by the way, I didn't have my phone out recording because I was freaked out. And then this
As
is like
one
1 in
would
the
do,
morning.
right?
Yeah. And then it's pretty late. It was like 1 in the morning. And then military Humvees roll through Port Gamble with guys in turrets on the top and guns pointed and spotlights spotting the area in the tree line where I thought the noises were coming from. And then I could hear them drive back in there up the little service trail, and then I never heard a thing after that. So
Wow.
I was freaked out, man. Yeah,
That's a pretty
that was-
interesting. That's, and not only were you recognizing this encounter
Yeah.
or whatever it was, but they obviously must have heard it too, based on the direction
Well,
and the
and
attention they were giving it.
Yeah, there's a naval base a few miles away, but man, it was I mean, I almost hit the deck when I saw the Humvees because I was like, I don't want them seeing me out here.
Right.
Snooping around. But yeah, that was pretty crazy. Well, we'll have to talk more about that kind of stuff. We'll have you back on the show sometime
Sure.
if you'd be willing to.
Yeah.
I'd love to have you back. But I want to touch on because I've had I'm gonna eventually have all the League of Extrasensory Gentlemen on here at some point. But I've had Casey Goodwin and Neil McNeil on, and you guys are like this conglomerate group that has come together, like-minded individuals, as we talked about before. And so you guys are working on this documentary, The Permanence, a paranormal case study on the Old Wheeler Hotel in Wheeler, Oregon. And coming from a technical background, what's been kind of the funnest part of filming for you from a technical standpoint? Because this has been, you guys have been filming for a long time.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a case study. So
Yeah.
you're going over a long period of time. So what's kind of been the funnest part technically that you've kind of found, hey, I kind of like this?
Just furthering those relationships with Neil, Michael, Casey, and Jay. When it's a lot of work, and there's a lot of redoing stuff because we're trying to figure this out, and we've got things that we learn as we go along, as anybody has seen following our Facebook page. Casey does a great job of highlighting some of our accomplishments and some of the areas where we've made some leaps and bounds in, and
yeah.
That's all really rewarding, but it's that time with these guys that I find the most valuable and my favorite part of it. The second piece is telling the story, of the old Wheeler Hotel.
Yeah.
And shining a positive light and a non-scary element on a location that does not deserve to have that kind of publicity or that kind of stigma. And just telling the history and the story and everything. That's a lot of fun for me, and I know it is for the guys too.
Yeah, it's so needed out there to tell a story in this way, and it kind of goes to what I was talking to at the top of the show tonight was, putting a human element to spirits, or telling their story, thinking of them not as a scary ghost, but as a person. And I think the story can come even more alive. And so I know that you guys were able to do just a little bit of filming, a little bit of work. I know COVID's really kind of threw a wrench in the whole thing as far as timing and getting production done. But what do you think, without spoiling anything, what do you think, what are you most excited for when you guys put this out? What are you most excited for?
I'm most excited that people will start thinking differently. They'll start considering our end of the way we're trying to propose people, approach things or look at things, and show this. There's a lot of, I like to call them hit it and quit it teams. A lot of teams out there that like to just do an investigation and they're on their way to the next one.
Oh, man.
And I mean, this is one of those things. They do this and that's their style. But I'm excited for people to see a different way to do things without making it scary, without selling fear, and just doing honest, critical thinking work.
And we need it. We need it out there. Well, I look forward to it coming out, and I hope you guys can get back to work on it when things are, when it's kosher to do that and safe and everything. And I look forward to seeing that come out. And there's a Facebook page for it.
Yes.
The Permanence, a paranormal case study. And then there's the permanencefilm.com, right?
Correct.
And then you guys have some awesome trailers up on YouTube. So look up The Permanence, a paranormal case study. They say they're not filmmakers, but go check it out and see what you think. But we got a question here that Michael White has posed. And I want to hit that before we sign off for the night real quick.
Okay.
So this goes back to frequency response range, because, he's going to throw a question like that. If the frequency response range exceeds human hearing, how can you hear the recording when it's played back? That means it's been changed. How valid is modified data?
Yeah. And he's absolutely right. And that's what I talked about. I touched a little bit on earlier, was it's modulating, it's changing that sound. And he's absolutely right. So we got to figure out a way to design equipment that's going to help us record things, whether we can pick it up with our ears or not, and then put it into graph form so we can see these, follow it along.
Right. With the appropriate software or whatever.
Yeah. But he's absolutely right. I mean, a digital audio recorder in itself is modulating the recording. It's taking it and it's like certain sounds that we don't pick up, or the fact of a disembodied voice speaking back to us that we don't actually hear with our naked ears. Then your device is somehow capturing something there, but it's converting it into a fashion so it fits in that window, that frequency response range, and plays it back. And that's what I think is a byproduct is these anomalous recordings.
Yeah. Well, and it just kind of takes you back to, we've just got to find some way to be able to measure and capture on multiple devices.
Yes.
Like you said, and then put it into software there. Well, we're getting close to the end of the show, but definitely check out the Permanence, a Paranormal Case Study. Everyone listening out there, if you haven't yet, go check out the trailers on YouTube, check out their website, or follow them on their Facebook page as well. And then definitely check out Ben's website. That's www.a-sep.org. So asep.org. If you want to read his article on the CERM hypothesis, it's pretty interesting. And then the universal mind theory as well. You've got an article on that too. Definitely go check it out, because it was thought-provoking for me. And like I said, Ben, I saw you speak on the universal mind theory way back, feels like a long time ago, but I guess it really wasn't.
It feels like a long time ago to me too. Back when we didn't have to have masks.
Oh yeah, when we could be around people.
Right.
But go check out his website, check out the work he's doing, and along with the Permanence, all those guys working together. It's pretty interesting. And Ben, I really appreciate you coming on. We've got another one of your fellows, one of your colleagues coming on later this month. So coming up, great lineup this month. We kicked off the new year with Ben. It was a great way to kick off the new year. We've got William Becker, a psychic medium, coming on next Tuesday. And then the week after that, on the 19th, I've got investigator and author Rick Hale from the Shadow Initiative and Spooky Isles. And so he's coming on the 19th. And then my good friend, Mr. Michael White, with Paranormal Research and Investigations of Washington. He's also a part of the Permanence, a Paranormal Case Study as well. So I've got him rounding out the month here. So, and then we're going to have a great lineup for February as well. And I just appreciate all the support with the show. Everybody listening out there, we're on Let's Talk Radio, WLTKDB.com. This show will be up on the show archive. If you just go to the website, it'll be up tomorrow. And if you weren't able to catch all of it, definitely go listen to the archive. There's a lot of other great shows on the station, so I implore you to check them out as well. And Ben, again, many thanks for coming on and kicking off the new year on the Paranormal Pete Show with me, and I really appreciate it. And we'll love to have you back on sometime.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, man, it's an honor. And I leave the show with a toast that the past is history, the future is a mystery, but today is a gift because it's the present. Don't forget to be in the present with all the crazy stuff in the world out there going on. Be in the present, hug the ones around you, virtually hug everybody else. And with that, we'll see y'all next week. Have a great one.
Thanks.
Don't forget,